Yeah. So already we have seen in the previous classes various types of microwave components.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, can you please start recording the lecture, sir?
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So in the previous class, we have studied about various microwave components, microwave devices like E-plenty, H-plenty, bands and all. Then in the previous last Friday's class, we have studied about isolator, directional coupler, all these devices, which is used to what do you call direct microwave signal to the microwave tubes or bigger microwave devices. So in these classes, we will study about introduction to conventional tubes, then what are the high frequency limitation of conventional tubes. Then I will be discussing about what do you call magnetron, klystron, all these things. So all this what do you call tubes advantages, disadvantages, working principle and applications will be discussed in this particular class. So today's class is very important and it will be bit like conceptual type. So without wasting time, let us begin the today's lecture. So conventional tubes. So the vacuum tubes such as triodes, tetrodes, pentodes, etc. So these are the examples of conventional tubes. And what are these vacuum tubes? So vacuum tubes are the electronic devices in which electrons flow through vacuum from one electrode to another electrode. Okay. So vacuum tubes, what happens basically? The electrons flow through vacuum from one electrode to another electrode. Generally speaking, vacuum tubes contains one cathode, one anode, and one or more than one grids. Understood? That grids is nothing but it plays a very important role in all these conventional tubes. So these grids are used for controlling actions. It is used to control specific functions. Since vacuum tubes are voltage control devices, so the grid voltage will be the controlling voltage. Understand? So the vacuum tubes can be operated at very high voltages and this can generate high power also. Understood? So this is basic concept of your conventional tubes, but why we cannot use these conventional tubes at microwave frequency, that we are going to discuss now. What are the high frequency limitations of this conventional tubes? Why we cannot use this conventional tubes at high frequency? So what are the reasons for that? Okay, so these vacuum tubes are useful for frequency generally below microwave frequency, because at microwave frequency these conventional tubes will have some limitations as it is listed there. You can see you have interelectrode capacitance, then you have lead inductance, then you have the limitations of transit time angle effect, then gain bandwidth production, product limitations, then skin effect, basically conductor losses will be more, radiation losses will be more, dielectric losses will be more. So we'll be discussing all this one by one. So let us start with the first point. What are these stray reactants, which is nothing but interelectrode capacitance and lead inductance. So we'll see all these points which is being listed here one by one. So we'll see first interelectrode capacitance. As you can see, I have mentioned here anode plate, cathode, then you have a grid. So this is a general conventional tube which I have shown here, and between grid and anode capacitance is existing. Again from here to here capacitance is existing, from here to here anode to cathode, then from grid to cathode capacitance is existing. So let us see what basically it is. So why we can't use this particular conventional tubes at high frequencies? So the first question is, where does this capacitance exist? As I have shown you, a capacitance exists between two metal plates separated by a dielectric, as you can see there. So now take an example of vacuum tube triode. So as I have taken three junctions, anode, cathode and triode. Okay, so in triode there are three electrodes and one grid, then one plate, another is cathode. So these electrodes are separated by dielectric air which has some dielectric constant. So there must exist some capacitance between these electrodes of the triode. So these capacitance are basically called as stray capacitance or inter-electrode capacitances. Generally, the capacitance of the two plates separated by dielectric is given by which formula? C is nothing but epsilon A by D, where A is nothing but the area of the plates and D is nothing but the distance between the plates. And the capacitive reactance of this is given by what? Nothing, Xc. Xc is nothing but 1 by 2 pi Fc. That means if Xc, that means Xc is inversely proportional to your frequency. You can see here Xc is inversely proportional to your frequency. So now as frequency is increasing, what will happen? Capacitive reactance decreases. Now at microwave frequencies, this capacitive reactance can be approximated by short circuit. That means this will become short circuit. So what will happen with that? When you are increasing the frequency, capacitive reactance will decrease and this will become as short circuit. So what will happen? Now applying this concept, now you apply this concept to this triode. So let us say at microwave frequencies, capacitance between grid and anode is approximated by short circuit. Then whatever voltage is present at the grid, understood? Whatever voltage is present at the grid will be directly transferred to anode. So there will be no amplification action, which in turn will reduce the gain of the device. That means the entire triode gain will be decreased. Okay, so this is the effect of your capacitance. So now let us see what is the lead inductance effect at microwave frequency, which hampers not to be used this conventional tube at microwave frequency. So next limitation of conventional tube is that lead inductance. Now again the same question, where does an inductance exist? So you can see here it is marked here. So an inductance exists for a conducting wire here at this portion. It is marked LP, LG, LK. So in this wire there exists inductance. So we have three types of inductance here: grid inductance, then you have plate, and then you have plate means nothing but anode inductance, then you have cathode inductance. Now in general, what is the inductance? Inductance is nothing but L is equal to L divided by mu I, where L is nothing but the length of the conducting wire, mu is nothing but the permeability of the material, and A is nothing but the cross section area of the conducting wire. And the inductive reactance is given by what? XL is equal to 2 pi FL. Now see here, frequency is directly proportional to inductive reactance. So as frequency increases, what will happen? Inductive reactance will increase. And at microwave frequencies, inductive reactance is very high. And because of this high impedance, there will be impedance matching problem at input port as well as at the output port. So because of this impedance mismatching, there will be a reflection from the input port and output port. And because of this reflection, whatever input you give to the triode, the small fraction of the input will reach to the terminal for amplification. And hence, the gain of this device again decreases. So we can explain this with another way, is that inductance of cathode is common to both grid and plate. So this will provide a feedback from output to input. And because of this feedback, the gain of this triode decreases. So now one more thing, these lead inductance with inter-electrode capacitance form unwanted resonant circuits. And these resonant circuits produce parasitic oscillations, and these parasitic oscillations will hamper the performance of the device, because again it connected in such a way that it again satisfy Bhaar-Kushyan criteria, which tends to sustain the oscillation in the device. So because of this effect, again it is not feasible to use this particular conventional tubes at microwave frequency. So here if you can see in inter-electrode capacitance, you can decrease this particular inter-electrode capacitance by decreasing the distance between these two plates. But again, if you are decreasing the distance, capacitance will increase. Again, if you are increasing the capacitance, XL, but again, this will increase your other gain, transit angle effect and short circuit problem, and again your inductance effect. So because of this, you cannot compromise of all these things. So we generally avoid using conventional tubes at this microwave frequency. So these are the two reasons for not using conventional tubes at microwave frequencies. So another very important reason is nothing but transit time or transit angle effect. It is nothing but transit time is nothing but how much time a signal requires to move from input to output. So now let us see what is this transit time effect. So basically what is the same thing as I told you. The transit time of an electron is the time taken by an electron to travel from cathode to anode. So let for a triode, the distance between anode and cathode is represented by d. It is shown there. You can see here. It is represented by d, and the average velocity of the electron is v naught. Then the transit time will be what? Nothing but it will be the distance divided by velocity. That means it is generally represented as tau. So tau will be given by what? D by v naught. Okay. So what will happen? We ask in terms of angles. So angle will be given as what? Theta g is nothing but omega tau, and tau already we have seen what it is, nothing but d by v naught. So the transit angle becomes what? Omega d by v naught. So now let us say this is the input voltage given to this divide where time. So this, just I'll minimize this. So this is the input signal given to this particular device where t is nothing but the time period of the input signal. Now, before analyzing the effect of frequency, let us see what happens if input voltage of this device changes. So what will happen? Pardon, who is there? Okay. So now let us see what happens if input voltage of this device changes. What will happen? So for the positive voltage, the electron will get potential energy to move from cathode to anode. Okay. But as voltage changes from positive to negative, the electron will be attracted towards the cathode. So now let us see what happens if frequency changes. So for low frequencies, the time period of the input signal is very, very greater than the electron transit time. So what will happen in this case? So as the voltage applied, then electron will get potential energy in the positive half cycle of the input, and they will move to the anode instantaneously before the input changes from positive to negative. Okay, but that was the scenario for lower frequency. But as the frequency increases, that means for higher frequencies, the time period of the input signal is very, very less than the electron transit time. That means the input changes approximately 100 times or 10 to 100 times in one transit time of an electron. So as soon as electron gets potential energy in positive half cycle of the input, it starts moving towards the anode. But before it could reach to the anode, the input changes from positive to negative. And in the negative cycle, that energy will be taken back and electron will be attracted towards the cathode. And the electron will move something like this. You see this red line. It will be moving something like this particular thing. Because of this, a part of the signal is lost. Generally, if I make a diagram, just it will be easier for you to suppose you have an input like this. Suppose you have input like this. For low frequency, what will happen? For low frequency signal, it is like this. So this is accommodated, but at high frequency, this is FL. This is FL, this is input, this is input. At high frequency signals will be what? It will be something very, very narrow. Just assume like this. So this input signal, if it is taking 1 turn, this particular high frequency takes multiple turns. Because of this, signal losses will be there at your output. So that is nothing but transit time effect. Okay, so this is basically your transit time effect problem at microwave frequency. let us see another limitation. So which is nothing but the gain bandwidth product limitations. As we know that at microwave frequency, the conventional tube starts resonating, as we have seen previously. So for resonant circuit, gain bandwidth product is constant. You have seen in your what do you call analog circuits while studying your feedback amplifiers. So for resonant circuit, bandwidth product is constant. So to achieve higher gains, what should we do? We should compromise for bandwidth. So this limitation of conventional tubes can be overcome by microwave tubes using reentrant cavities. Correct? No. So gain bandwidth product is nothing but gain. GBW is nothing but gain into bandwidth. G into bandwidth. So, but the thing is that for all devices, you have to keep this as constant at higher frequency, at microwave frequency. At microwave frequency, what will happen? Bandwidth will increase. So bandwidth will increase by the same amount, gain will decrease. If it is not so, then gain bandwidth product will not be constant. So that cannot happen. So in order to make this gain bandwidth product constant, what you have to do? You have to reduce the gain by the same amount as you have increased the bandwidth. So this is another limitations of your conventional tubes at microwave frequency. But in case of the devices which we are going to study, like microwave tubes, these limitations can be overcome by putting different cavities in between input to output. That is nothing but using reentrant cavities or the slow wave structure by slowing down the movement of the applied input signal. This we will discuss. All this thing I will discuss in the later slides. Okay. So now the next limitation is the skin depth. So as you all know, in your field theory, you have studied that what is skin depth. Skin depth is nothing but it is the depth through which the currents penetrates in a material. That is nothing but given by delta is equal to 1 by under root of pi mu sigma f. So that means nothing but mu is nothing but what? Permeability of the material, and sigma is nothing but the conductivity of the conductor. F is nothing but the frequency. So here from here what you can see. So skin depth is inversely proportional to 1 by under root of frequency. So as frequency increases, what will happen? Skin depth decreases. Correct? No. So we can see that, or like we can say at microwave frequencies, most of the current flows through the surface. Correct? No. Or we can say effective area. Surface means what? Nothing but effective area. So what will happen with that? So as we can say current is flowing through the effective area, and this flow will decrease. Why? Skin depth is decreasing. And now you see this area is related to your resistance by which formula? This formula R is equal to rho L by A. So now surface area current is decreasing. That means what is happening? Resistance is increasing. So what will happen? So this skin depth, what will happen? As this area, effective area is reduced by skin depth, so resistance of that conductor will increase, and because of this increased resistance, there will be more conductor loss at microwave frequency. So see, frequency increases, skin depth decreases, surface current decreases, resistance increases, more conductor losses at microwave frequencies because of conventional tubes. So now next limitation is nothing but radiation losses. What is this radiation losses? So at microwave frequencies, electrode pins, which you have seen there, starts radiating because it shows it cannot handle that much amount of power. So because of this radiation, there will be radiation losses. This is because of this, we cannot again use this particular conventional tubes at microwave frequency. And the last type of loss is nothing but dielectric losses. So dielectric losses is nothing but it totally depends upon the loss tangent of the material. So what will happen? So in this case, when the frequency increases, the loss tangent of the dielectric material increases. So once the loss of dielectric material increases, there will be more dielectric losses at microwave frequency. So because of this dielectric losses, we cannot operate the conventional tube at microwave frequencies. So strictly speaking, if you see what you call your Samuel L. Liao book, only they have considered three important points. That is nothing but only these 3 points they cover in your Samuel L. Liao. That is nothing but interelectrode conventional tubes are not used at high frequency because of 3 reasons only. It is mentioned in your Samuel L. Liao book. That is nothing but interelectrode capacitance and that is basically stray reactance. Second one is your transit time angle effect and gain bandwidth product limitations. So these 3 effects are also very important, which is not mentioned in your Samuel L. Liao, but this is very important from competitive point of view. Questions generally is asked in GATE examinations. So I have included this also: skin effect, radiation losses, and dielectric losses. So these are other 3 what you call factors which hampers the performance of your conventional tube at microwave frequency. So this is all about the limitation of conventional tubes at microwave frequency. This is why we cannot use our microwave frequency conventional tubes at microwave frequency. Now we'll start with microwave tubes without wasting time. So these are fundamental reasons which they may ask you in your exam. So please be thorough with that. These are just conceptual thing, nothing mathematical. So but you should remember these things. They generally ask for 2 marks, 3 marks question or 4 mark question. What are the basic demerits or disadvantage of the conventional tubes, so that we cannot use it for microwave frequencies. So these are the reasons which I have discussed just now. So next I will start with microwave tubes. So this is very important thing which we are now discussing, because we have 3 types, basically 3 types of devices, or just you can say 4 types of devices which we have to study in depth. That is nothing but klystron. Then in klystron we have 2 types, reflex klystron and multi-cavity klystron. Then we will study about traveling wave tubes or slow wave structure, we can see. Then we will study about magnetron. So these 3 are very important, and out of these 3, any one will be asked in your exam in a large descriptive answers, like explain reflex klystron or reflex magnetron, explain 2 cavity klystron or reflex klystron, or explain TWT, traveling wave tube, or explain magnetron. So when this question is asked, you have to explain each and everything, and most probably this question will be of, I think, 6 to 7 marks. So accordingly, you have to define each and everything. You have to start from its working principle. What is the working principle? Then briefly explain the working principle, then its specification, advantage, disadvantage, other things. So all these things are theoretically. Some numericals they may ask from velocity modulation or something kinetic energy and potential energy, not beyond that. So, and as far as competitive exams and gates are concerned, from here you will get theoretical type of questions, but very conceptual. So, and that conceptual questions are generally asked from your working principle. That's all, like klystron operates on which type of principle, velocity modulation or current modulation, all these things we are going to discuss. So basically now you are studying the last component of your microwave devices. That is nothing but tubes, like klystron, magnetron, all these things. So basically all these are divided into different types. So we will be discussing here. So let us start. What are these microwave tubes? So basically microwave tubes. So basically your microwave tubes are of 2 types, as you can see here. One is linear beam type. This is also called as O type, and another one is cross field types or M types. So in M types, you can see here I have given a pinpoint difference between these 2, which is very easy to understand it. The description, this is basically a klystron, and the same setup which you are seeing here can be found in your lab. For this magnetic field, this is basically a magnetron based on cross field device. So this is not there in your lab, but conceptually you should know what is magnetron. But this experiment is included in your lab, as well as questions will be there from your questions will be asked in GATE exam from this particular question. A rare question comes from magnetron. So let us see what it is. So as you can see that in M-type tubes, DC magnetic field and the DC electric fields are perpendicular to each other. Here you can see it is continuously rotating. The coming out portion is nothing but magnetic field, rotating portion is nothing but electric field. So here DC electric field and magnetic field both are perpendicular to each other, that which is not in the case of linear beam. That's why the name it is linear beam, and here the name cross field. Here basically your magnetic field is parallel with the DC electric field. Here you can see this is magnetic field, beyond it is electric field. So here it is parallel, but here this is not the case. From here we are applying the input signal. Once we are applying the input signal, the charges are moving through these cavities. Basically these are cavities, drift spaces between the cavities. So you can see the movement of the charge is through this. That means electric field is through this particular space, and the same thing once this current generates a magnetic, once the charges moves, it induces a magnetic field, which is nothing but it is also in the same direction. So that means both the fields are parallel to each other and both flow in a linear direction. That's why the name linear beam type, where in case of M-type devices this is not the case. Here your electric field and magnetic fields are perpendicular to each other. Okay, so we'll explain in detail. So basically, in case of your electric, M-type devices, beam type devices. In linear beam type, DC magnetic field you have seen is in parallel with your electric field, and this type of tubes, electrons are injected from cathode and they will be getting potential energy from the DC beam voltage. And after getting this potential energy, the electron will move to microwave interaction. Basically this is a microwave interaction region, and of the potential energy is converted into kinetic energy. So from here you are supplying energy, and in this particular space entire thing is taking place, interaction between electron and RF voltage, and at the end you are getting the output at this particular place. And once it is entering here, so there takes acceleration and deacceleration of charge. It will be accelerated, it will be deaccelerated. So because of this acceleration and deacceleration, bunches, electron form bunches as they move down the tube from here to here, input to output, and this bunch electron induces current at the output structure, and after that they give that their energy to the microwave present in the output structure. Whatever field will be there, it will supply there, it will directly output their energy to that particular output structure. So at this point they will be collected at the output, but in this case slight different operation is there, which I will be discussing in the later slide. So let us give a brief, a detailed classification of all these tubes, like which type belongs to what category. So for this we'll see what it is. So we can see here, so linear beam tapes, I told you linear beam tube is generally called as O-type tube because we have to discuss this thing in detail. So we'll see here linear beam tubes are of two types. Here you can see what is that, cavity type and slow wave structure type. So cavity type structure are the resonant structure. Please make a note of this. Anyhow, lecture is getting recorded, so you can understand it. You can listen later also. So cavity type structures are the resonant structures, and slow wave structures are non-resonant structure. Okay, so each one of these structure has some advantage and some disadvantage, which I will discuss after again covering these two structures. So in the slow wave structure, the name slow waves come from the fact that this type of structures are used to slow down the electromagnetic wave. That's why the name slow wave structure. So now the question is, why we need to slow down the electromagnetic wave? Can anybody answer? Why we need to slow down the electromagnetic wave? So we use slow wave structure. I don't think you have any idea. Yeah, if anybody is willing to tell, you can answer.
Sir, to overcome the problem we face with transit time.
Yeah, you can tell that. Correct. So because the electron moves much slower than the electromagnetic wave, so what will happen? So electron do not get sufficient time to interact with microwave field. So to increase the time of interaction of electron, we need to decrease the velocity of electromagnetic wave. That's why we use slow wave structure. Okay, so slow wave structure are of two types. You can see here. Slow wave structure are of two types depending upon the movement of electrons in the tube. What is that? Forward wave and backward wave. So again, forward wave is divided into two parts. Helix traveling wave, TWT, is nothing but traveling wave tube, and coupled cavity, coupling through coupling phenomena, it is moved forward. And in case of backward wave, we have again two types of tubes, backward wave, two types of devices, backward wave amplifier and backward wave oscillators. Same thing. In types of cavity type, resonant, we have klystron, we have multi-cavity klystron and reflex klystron. Basically, multi-cavity klystron is nothing but it is your amplifier. Reflex klystron is nothing but it is basically your oscillator. So a very famous question comes here. So which of the cavity type resonant tube act as an amplifier? So your answer should be multi-cavity klystron or two-cavity klystron. Two-cavity klystron or multi-cavity klystron acts generally as an amplifier. Now, reflex klystron act as an oscillator because here sustained oscillations are created because there is a feedback from output to input. So all these things we'll be discussing in the later slides. So let us start with klystron. So as you can see, the specification of klystron is being shown here. So basically, klystron tube is a vacuum tube that can be operated either as an oscillator or an amplifier. So when I tell oscillator, it corresponds to a reflex klystron. When I tell amplifier, it corresponds to multi-cavity like 2-cavity, 3-cavity, 4-cavity amplifier. Okay. So in klystron, there are two configurations. One is low power amplifier, which is nothing but multi-cavity klystron, which is nothing but multi-cavity klystron, and another one is nothing but low power oscillator, which is nothing but a reflex klystron basically. So now if I see like what are basically this klystron, how it looks like, so it is generally exactly it is looking like same thing. Again, lab is closed today, otherwise I would have shown you the pic. Lab is not open here, they have closed the lab permanently until unless this COVID scenario goes. Otherwise, I tried to take snap, but it was locked, so I couldn't take. So anyhow, sometime after completing this syllabus, if from September they are planning to open some labs, so I will take some snapshot and share with you. These are the like practical circuits which you will be seeing in the lab. Anyhow, we'll see later that. So let us start with multi-cavity klystron. So this is like basic diagram of two-cavity klystron. So before analyzing the working of multi-cavity klystron, we need to understand some assumption. Okay. While analyzing the working of multi-cavity klystron, the first assumption I have listed here, these are very important. Remember it, otherwise you cannot explain the phenomena of multi-cavity klystron. Whether it is multi-cavity means I take consideration of 2-cavity, 4-cavity, 5-cavity, 3-cavity, same, all working principle remains the same, but slight working condition is different for your reflex klystron. So we'll see here what are the assumptions. So the first assumption is that the electron transit time in the cavity gap is very, very small, and you can see here the diagram is self-understood. So for a multi-cavity or klystron, what we have generally, we have a cathode, then this particular cathode and anode is connected at this particular point. Then we have an electron beam from where we are putting the input, and this particular cavity is nothing but called as buncher cavity, where you will have bunching effect. Then from this, after the electrons are bunched together, it comes out and it travels through the space between this cavity and this cavity. This is another cavity which is also called as catcher cavity, where you take the output and remaining electrons goes to the collector. Unbunched electron goes to the collector. So the distance between buncher cavity and catcher cavity is nothing but drift space. This is general diagram which again I will explain you. So microwave input is applied here, output is taken here. So buncher cavity, so generally question asks in exam is that which cavity is close to the input. So which cavity is close to the input? Buncher cavity is close to the input. Through which cavity the output is taken? So through catcher cavity output is taken out. So where we apply generally the microwave input. So we apply generally the microwave input from buncher cavity. This question may be asked in your MCQ also. I'll set the question in such a way that it covers some portions of your GATE examinations. So basically this is a typical diagram of your two multi-cavity klystron, and we'll see basically two cavity klystron. Here if you are increasing the number of this recurrent cavities, suppose if you are adding one more cavity here, it becomes 3 cavity. If you are adding one more cavity here, it becomes 4 cavities. So just addition of cavity names goes accordingly like that. So let us see, we will start with assumption. So the first assumption, as I was discussing, is that electron transit time in the cavity gap is very small as compared to the period of input RF signal. Now this assumption is made to neglect the back and forth movement of electrons in the cavity map. Okay, so that they cannot move back and forth such that oscillations may be produced. So in order to avoid that, we have assumed this. So next assumption is what? Input RF signal amplitude is very small as compared to the DC beam voltage. Why? Because the reason is for this, again, this is also the same as the last one case. Signal moves back and forth and oscillation will be there in the space, basically drift space between your catcher and buncher cavity. Oscillations will be sustained here. So in order to avoid that, we assume this phenomena. So the next assumption is that what? The next assumption is that RF fields are totally confined in the cavity gap and zero in the drift space. I told you what is drift space, what is it? So you can see here. So what is that? Velocity of what do you call that? The RF fields are totally confined in the cavity gaps and zero in the drift space. So basically this particular assumption is done so that the velocity of electron is modulated only in the cavity gap. It is not modulated anywhere else. Otherwise, again, different phenomena will take place. So in order to modulate, in order to increase or form the bunch in a particular cavity, this phenomena is particularly assumed. Otherwise, bunching will be formed somewhere else, and which will again tends to deviate the circuit performance, hamper the circuit performance at microwave frequency. Okay. So basically this assumption is made so that the velocity of electron is modulated only in this particular cavity gap. So there will be no velocity modulation in the drift space, and the kinetic energy of these electrons will be transferred to the output structure. Okay, or the output cavity anywhere. And the what you call this next assumption is that electrons leave the cathode with zero initial velocity, and after that they will move with uniform velocity. This is also a very important assumption. And the last assumption is that we neglect the effect of space charge. That means space charge effects are negligible. Now we'll see the working of this particular multi-cavity klystron. So as I told you, the diagram corresponds to two-cavity klystron itself. So we'll define the working condition of two-cavity klystron, and based on this two-cavity klystron, what you call you have 3-cavity klystron, 4-cavity klystron, 5-cavity klystron. So operations remains the same. If you understand 2-cavity klystron, just the addition of cavities are there for 3, 4, 5, something like that. Okay. So basically a 2-cavity klystron is widely used microwave amplifier which works on the principle of velocity modulation and current modulation. This point is very, very important. Your one gate question is being solved here. That's the gate question from here. What is the working principle of two-cavity klystron? I will be explaining what is velocity modulation and current modulation. So the working principle of two-cavity klystron or 3-cavity klystron or 4-cavity klystron is nothing but velocity and current modulation. What is this? We'll explain here. Okay. So basically 2-cavity klystron works on the principle of velocity and current modulation. So in this there are 2 cavities. As I told you, one is input cavity, which is also called as, I'll go to previous slide. Here you can see. So one is input cavity, which is also called as buncher cavity. Here you can see. And one is output cavity, which is also called as catcher cavity. I'll explain here itself. So electron in this klystrons are injected from this, and whatever I am telling, just you note it down from your recorded lectures and explain like that only. No need to refer book. Whatever I am dictating, or like dictating in the sense whatever I am telling verbally in my own language, that itself you write in your own language. That itself forms the working. No need to refer book for more details and all. So whatever I am telling, that is more than enough to understand the things. So no need to refer books or do something more than enough. I am explaining here. You can just hear these lectures, you can write it and explain the same thing in your own words. Nothing extra is required. So electron in this particular klystron are injected from the cathode, and all these injected electrons will reach to the first cavity with uniform velocity. Now, assumption, all these assumptions already I have discussed. So what is happening here? So we are applying all these electrons are injected from this cathode, and all these injected electrons will reach to the first cavity. First cavity means nothing but this cavity, buncher cavity, with uniform velocity. So this particular cavity, you can tell it first cavity or buncher cavity, anything. So the velocity of this electron will be modulated by the input RF signal. Okay. The velocity of this electron will be modulated by the input RF signals present there in the first cavity, and this will velocity modulate the electrons, and this phenomena is called as basically velocity modulation. So, and because of this velocity modulation, electron form bunches. I'll show you this entire phenomena. I will show you in graph. So because of this velocity modulation, electron form bunches as they drift down the tube, and this is called as bunch formation. Once it is coming out, the bunch of electrons will be coming out from this cavity. Okay. So what will happen? And because of this bunch formation, the density of the electron in the catcher cavity varies periodically with time. So all the electrons coming here, and it will be collected here, and it will be varying periodically with times. That means the electron beam contains AC current, that is known as current modulation. So after passing through the second cavity, all the electrons will give up their kinetic energy to the microwave field present in the second cavity, and because of that their velocity will be reduced, and the remaining they will be collected as the collector. That's all, nothing beyond that. This is the basic principle of your two cavity klystron. So here they have same thing. So we'll see in more detail what is this basically: bunching process, velocity modulation, current modulation, all these things. Okay. Now let us see in detail. So this is what you call, as I told you, cathode. This is the cathode, collector, input cavity, that is nothing but buncher cavity, catcher cavity acting as output cavity. So input RF signal is applied here, and the output signal will be given to this. Okay, so here you can see V0, the distance from where you are injecting the electrons, space is nothing but D, drift space from where to where, buncher cavity to catcher cavity, buncher cavity to catcher cavity is represented by L. These are the bunched form electrons moving from buncher cavity. You can see the electrons bunches are formed once it leaves your buncher cavity. So it is coming out. So from here this is taken out, and the remaining is taken by collector by the phenomena which I will be explaining here. Okay, this is basically the diagram, and correspondingly I have given the length and time how it is happening here. So this particular axis represents your total distance from here to here, and this represents the movement of the input signal at different time. So let us see what is basically all these things. So see here. So the gaps of the input and output cavity, these gaps are called as microwave interaction region. In this region, electron will be interacted with microwave field present there in the cavity. So DC voltage, you can see it is being applied at this particular point. So electron will be injected from this cathode and they will move with a uniform velocity, and this uniform velocity is given as, from here you can find, I am equating potential energy with kinetic energy. So this V0 is nothing but the velocity of electron. Sorry, V0 is nothing but applied voltage. This EV0, potential energy, EV0 is nothing but the voltage. This V0 is nothing but the velocity of electron. So the velocity of electron is nothing but under root of twice EV0 divided by m, where E is nothing but the electron charge, V0 is nothing but the DC beam voltage, and m is nothing but the mass of the electron. So this velocity can be derived by equating this particular potential energy and kinetic energy. So now what is potential energy and what is kinetic energy? I think these are the basic things you already know. So I have just equated and I have formed this particular equation. So kinetic energy is nothing but half mv square, where this is given, and potential energy is nothing but EV0. So after equating you will get this particular equations, that is nothing but V0 is equal to under root of twice of EV0 divided by m. So now let us say the average time to reach this buncher cavity is T0. Now see here. Here you can see all these things are represented here. So here I am representing T0, Tg, V0, D, source voltage, bunched electrons, difference between distance between booster cavity to catcher cavity, L, this is collector, and this is the RF output place where you are applying a load. Okay, so let us see the average time to reach this buncher cavity is T0, and the average time to leave this cavity is Tg. Then what will be the transit time? What will be the transit time? So transit time will be nothing but, it will be given by tau, and tau will be what? Nothing but Tg minus T0, entering, leaving. What is transit time? Nothing but Tg minus T0. And the gap, what you are seeing here, is nothing but D. The distance between this gap, what is the cavity gap, is nothing but D. Let us say that gap of this cavity is D. Then the transit time will be what? This particular distance, Tg minus T0, is equal to what? D by V0. And when you apply theta g, transit angle, what it will becomes? Omega tau, and omega tau will be D divided by V0. Same thing, equal to the distance. So the total transit time will be what? Tau Tg minus T0, which is nothing but the distance divided by velocity. Again, you know that transit angle is given as theta g, and theta g is what? Omega into tau. Tau already we have found. So the entire transit angle becomes what? Omega d divided by V0. So now what will happen to this electron in the cavity gap? So now in order to know this, we need to see the bunching process. So let us say this particular vertical axis represents the distance along the tube. Along the tube means this buncher cavity to catcher cavity. Okay. And horizontal, as I told you, horizontal axis represents the time, and this wave will be traveling through at different time through this particular axis we'll be considering. So now let us say we have a reference electron E0. All these electrons are represented here. Now let us see this particular reference electron we represent by E0, which reaches to the cavity at this point of time. So at this point of time, the input RF signal is what? You can see here, 0. So because of this, there will be no change in the velocity of this particular signal, because same velocity as it is entering, it is the same velocity. So it is maintained as same. So now let us say this electron reaches the delta L point or del L distance after TD minus TB time. After TD minus TB time. So let us, we have another electron, say you can say this as early electron, EE, which is being represented here. So let us say this is what you call early electron. So what will happen here? So for this electron, the velocity will be reduced to the minimum. Why? Because it is exactly at the minimum of the input signal. So what will happen? So this will move with a velocity less than the velocity of your reference particular E naught, as I have seen here. So it will be, its velocity will be less than the velocity of the reference what you call electron, which we have assumed, or this will take more time than the reference electron. So let us say this reaches to del L point after TD minus TA time. So which is also equal to the time taken by the reference electron plus this time. So this time will be what? So this time will be nothing but, so this time will be nothing but, this time will be nothing but pi by 2 omega, which is nothing but T by 4, T by 4, where T is nothing but the time period of the input signal. So time taken by the early electron, this particular electron, to reach this point, will be the time taken by the reference electron plus 1/4 of the time period of the input RF signal. Now let us see, let us say we have one more electron. So I'm basically taking 3 electrons and showing here. So let us see, we have another electron. So let us consider we have one more electron, that is the late electron, that reaches to the late electron EL, which reaches to the buncher cavity at this point of time when the input RF signal is positive maxima. You can see here is at positive maxima. When it reaches at the positive maxima, this is nothing but what you call a late electron. So its velocity is increased to maximum. Why? Because it is interacting with the positive maxima of your RF signal. So what will happen? So its velocity is increased to the maximum and it will take less time as compared to the reference electron. So it will take less time as compared to the reference electron. So let us say this time is nothing but TD minus TC, time to reach to this point. So this time will be taken by the reference electron minus this particular time, exactly opposite of the early electron. So this time will be time taken by the reference electron minus this time. So what will be this time? This time again will be T by 4. So the time taken by late electron, this particular late electron, will be time taken by the reference electron minus 1/4 of the time period of the input RF signal. So this is how these electrons will be bunched after this particular distance. So because of this interaction at negative cycle, at zero interaction, zero voltage, at positive cycles of 3 different electrons, what will happen? They will form a bunch at this particular point, and this bunch will be coming out as the signal moves away. So this is basically nothing but a bunching process which is formed inside the buncher cavity, and it comes and it moves from buncher to catcher cavity once the interaction goes on increasing. So basically the velocity of this electron can be calculated by this particular formula, nothing but what is that? Under root of twice of EB naught divided by M, where I have shown you what is nothing but V is the voltage of this electron and will be different, that will be DC voltage of that thing. So as a result, when you compute the entire thing, you get the equation for velocity modulation. That equation is nothing but, no need to derive, just you remember this thing, the velocity modulation, this particular formula, you remember, hardly it is being asked, but this is a standard formula for bunching process which has been written here. So just remember this particular formula for velocity modulation is nothing but is given by this. Okay, so after passing through the buncher cavity, they will form bunches as they drift down into the tube, and in the catcher cavity the phase of the gap voltage is maintained such that the electron, okay, the phase where it is coming, the phase of the gap voltage is maintained such that the electron beam encounters a retarding phase, so that this electron gives their kinetic energy to this catcher cavity, and after giving back their kinetic energy, the velocity of these electrons will be reduced and they will be collected by the collector, and this will be going again to your ground. So basically this is the working principle of your two cavity klystron. So if you are putting one more cavity here, same function, it will be extended to 3 cavity klystron, 4 cavity klystron. So now you will see the specification of two cavity klystron. So basically, practically, the specification of two cavity klystrons are being represented here. So the beam voltage or nothing is up to few hundreds of kilovolt, and this from this particular specification, one or two questions generally they ask. Sometimes they ask principle of klystron, sometimes they ask what is the efficiency of two cavities. So some objective type questions is being asked from here. So this is generally the specification of two cavity klystron. Beam voltage up to few hundreds of kilovolt it produces. Efficiency is about 40%. Less efficiency. How to increase the efficiency? Increase the recurrent cavity. Efficiency will increase. Then the average power is up to 500 kilowatt. Pulse power is nothing but it is in some tens of milliwatts up to 50 gigahertz. After that again it changes. So power gain of the entire two cavity klystron is about 30 dB, not beyond that. So this is all about your two cavity klystron. So three cavity klystron amplifier, as I told you, what happened? We increase the cavity. So what will happen? So in case of three cavity klystron, we will be having three cavities. One is input cavity, another one is output cavity, and between these two cavity there is a reentrant cavity here. So this reentrant cavity increases the output power, bandwidth, and efficiency of the three cavity klystron as compared to two cavity klystron. So just it is an what we call a simple questions they ask in order to increase the efficiency or power. What do you do in two cavity klystron? Just we increase one more reentrant cavity such that its efficiency and all increases, and the functions remains the same. So what are the different applications of klystron amplifiers? So the different functions of klystron amplifiers we can see here. It is used for UHF or TV transmitter, in tropospheric scatter transmitter, in satellite communication, radar, all these things it is used. So this is all about your what you call klystron amplifier. So another one we have to discuss is that what is a reflex klystron. In two cavity klystron we can see amplification is taking place. There is no what you call feedback from input to output. Both are independent. But in case of reflex klystron, that is not the case. So we will see that what is a reflex klystron. So as you can see, this is a reflex klystron. Practical device of reflex klystron, which is given here. As we have seen, two cavity klystron is nothing but an amplifier, but reflex klystron is an oscillator. So if I am telling it is an oscillator, that means oscillations are produced here. So in order to produce oscillations, we should have what? Bark-Fusion criteria to be satisfied. What is that Bark-Fusion criteria? I think you might have studied in your analog electronics. The total loop gain around the circuit should be greater than or equal to 1. That is nothing but 1 plus beta A. Beta is nothing but feedback factor, and the total phase shift around the circuit should be how much? 0 degree or 360 degree. Okay, so these are the two criteria which needs to be satisfied in order to produce oscillation in a device. So all these two criteria are being satisfied in reflex klystron. That's why it acts as an oscillator. Again, its working principle is same as your what you call two cavity klystron. So for klystron, the working principle is same, that is velocity and current modulation. Okay, so we'll see here. So basically reflex klystron is a low power microwave oscillator, and to design an oscillator, as I told you, the first thing is that we need to know how oscillations are generated. So how oscillations are generated, can anybody tell how to satisfy Bark-Fusion criteria? Hello, answer anyone? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Tell me the answer. What is the first and foremost condition to make a device to act as an oscillator?
Feedback, sir.
You need to provide positive feedback. Correct.
Negative
feedback should be there. Otherwise, cannot act as an oscillator. That means positive feedback. All this thing you have studied in your analog electronics in oscillator chapter. So basically these all things are called as Barkhausen criteria, which I have just explained you. That means we need to give positive feedback from output to input such that the loop gain is unity, or we can say that in a klystron, if a fraction of output power is fed back to the input cavity such that the loop gain magnitude is 1 and the feedback path phase shift is 2 pi or multiples of 2 pi, then the klystron, what it will do? It will oscillate. That is nothing but that is the Barkhausen criteria to sustain your oscillations. Now, one question arises. Can we make oscillator using two cavity klystron? So oscillations are produced. So can we make oscillator using two cavity klystron? I am asking you. Oscillations are produced, positive feedback we are dealing, it is satisfying 1 plus beta I criteria, then phase shift criteria. So can we make oscillator using two cavity klystron? Any answers from your side? Yes, we can make it, but it will have some disadvantage such that if the oscillation frequency changes, we need to readjust the resonant frequency of the two cavities and the feedback path phase shift to give positive feedback. So this disadvantage of two cavity klystron can be overcome by reflex klystron. Okay, understood?
Yes, sir.
How this particular disadvantage of two cavity klystron can be overcome? By using single cavity. That means if this particular reflex klystron is having single cavity and there is a reflector or nothing but repeller, which is used to repel the electron back to the cavity to give feedback, and the feedback path phase shift can be adjusted by varying the repeller voltage. And because of this reason, the two cavity klystrons are not constructed and reflex klystron oscillators are constructed. So this is basically your reflex klystron. You can see here, same thing I told here just now. Feedback is there from repeller to cathode. Positive feedbacks will apply, which is not possible in case of your two cavity klystron. So more or less the working of reflex klystron is similar to two cavity klystron. So it is again, its working is based on principle of velocity modulation and current modulation. So electron beam is injected. So if you see, same thing, in more detail you will see. So electron beam is injected from cathode, same thing as we have explained for your two cavity klystron. Same concept applies here also. So electron beam is injected from cathode and that injected beam travels with a uniform velocity till the cavity. Okay. And in the cavity gap, the velocity of electron is modulated, and those velocity modulated electrons enters the repeller space with a different velocity. And because of this velocity modulation and repulsive forces from the repeller plate, the bunching takes place of the bunching process basically take place. This bunching take place in the return journey of the electrons to the cavity, and because of this bunch formation there will be current modulation in the cavity. So this is basically how your reflex klystron works. Same more or less, only the thing is that here a feedback is provided from your repeller to your cathode, which was not there in case of your two cavity klystron. Rest the formation of bunch, formation of current and same phenomena, it is like velocity and current modulation remains the same. It doesn't vary much. So same thing, early electron, late electron, reference electron, all these things are being represented here at different particular gap. So let us see what basically it is. In detail we will see what this particular diagram tells about this reflex klystron. So you see, so same thing, we have a cathode from the electron beam is injected here. This is focusing anode where, or accelerating anode, which focuses the electron beam or narrow downs to the electron. Then we have cavity. So this cavity, it acts as a buncher cavity. This this cavity acts as a buncher cavity. Oh, I got tired. For forward moving electrons, and catcher cavity for backward moving electrons. So basically in this cavity gap where velocity and current modulation take place, and the gap is equal to d, this particular distance is equal to d. Then we have a repeller plate which is at the potential of minus VR, and this VR is very high. So because of this negative potential repeller plate, the electron beam coming from the cavity gap is reflected back to the cavity of klystron. Here you can see. So this is the basic structure of your reflex klystron. So here you are observing the difference in the structure of two cavity klystron and the reflex klystron. What is the basic difference between the structure of two cavity klystron and reflex klystron? So the first difference is that in two cavity klystron there are two cavities, whereas in reflex klystron there is only one cavity which act as both buncher cavity as well as catcher cavity. The another difference is that in two cavity klystron, at this place there is collector. Correct. We have a collector which is used to collect the electron beam coming from the output, whereas in reflex klystron there is a repeller plate in place of the collector which is used to repel the electron beam back to your cavity. Now again the question is that why we need this repelling electron beam? Why? Because for electrical oscillation we need feedback, correct? Now from output to input. So this is being provided by this particular repeller. So we will see how electron move in reflex klystron tube. So electron beam is generated from this particular cathode, which moves with a uniform velocity till this particular cavity, and in this cavity the velocity modulation take place. So some electrons will be accelerated and some electrons will be deaccelerated. You can see this diagram here, and there will be no effect for some electrons, that means for reference electrons E0. Okay, so the electrons which enters this cavity at positive gap voltage will be accelerated, and those will be at will have greater velocity, and the electrons which enters in this cavity gap voltage at negative, those electrons will be deaccelerated. Okay, and the electrons which enter this cavity gap with zero velocity or gap voltage 0, their velocity will not be changed. And what will happen? So all these electrons will have different velocities as they enter the repeller stage. Correct? No, same phenomena it is also taking place here. So same again, velocity modulation and current modulation will take place, which forms bunches, and this bunches again follows a voltage and it given to your repeller after retarding force, and again it is given back to your cathode. So this is how the entire bunching process and what you call bunching process and what you call current modulation takes place in your entire reflex klystron. Same method, nothing new to this. So the same as we have seen, 3 electrons, reference electrons, velocity here, again here. So and it is operated at different modes. So generally mode is given by n plus 3/4 mode. It is represented and this n is any integer, 1 plus 0. If it is not having any mode, then it is just having 3/4 mode. All these things are represented here in this particular diagram. So just it is a what you call extension of your two cavity klystron. Just to make it oscillate, we use particular reflex klystron. So what is the specification of reflex klystron? So basically it's, you can see its frequency range is extended. We can use it from 1 gigahertz to 200 gigahertz. We can tune it to, it has a tuning range from 5 gigahertz to 30 gigahertz. Correspondingly, what is the power required for tuning is also given there. So power output for this particular reflex klystron is 10 milliwatts to 2.5 watts. Theoretical efficiency is reduced, only one cavity is there obviously, so it will have reduced efficiency, that is around 22.78, whereas in case of your two cavity klystron, it was around 40%. See, efficiency is around 40%. But in case of your reflex klystron, you have an efficiency around 22.78%, where practical frequency is still more or less. So this is how we deal with this particular tube set microwave frequency. So what are the basic applications of reflex klystrons? They are used in radar receivers. They can be used in radio receivers or in signal source in microwave generators. They are also used in local oscillators and receivers or in pump oscillators in parametric amplifiers. And these are also used in portable microwave links. So these are all applications of your reflex klystrons. So this was all two cavity klystron and reflex klystron. Two cavity klystron is nothing but multi-cavity klystron and reflex klystron. So another structure which we are going to study in today's class is nothing but traveling wave tubes. So we have seen already in the starting what are these things. So we'll be studying microwave tubes, which is nothing but traveling wave tube. So these microwave tubes are non-resonant structures, and there are two types. First one is of helix type, that is helix traveling wave tube. So helix traveling wave tubes are slow wave structures and are used for broadband applications. And the another one is nothing but coupled cavity traveling wave tubes, which are used for high power applications such as radar transmitters and all. So I will discuss these two structures one by one, but before that, let us see what are slow wave structures. Before going to that, we'll see what are different slow wave structures. Traveling wave tubes. Okay. So basically, slow wave structures, as I told you, there are different types of slow wave structures like zigzag line, then you have helical line, folded back line. All these basically used to slow down the movement of electromagnetic wave. So here, if you see here, it is a helix type slow wave structure. If you can see here, this is basically a helix type line which is used to slow the electromagnetic wave. So as we have already told you what is the requirement of slowing down the electromagnetic wave. Same thing, answer remains the same. The phase velocity of electromagnetic wave is greater than the velocity of light. Already you know all these things in an ordinary waveguide. So what will happen? The electron beam can be accelerated up to fraction of velocity of light in vacuum. So there is a huge mismatch in this velocity of these two. So one is electromagnetic wave, another one is electron beam. So because of this velocity mismatch, they will not get enough time to interact with each other. And you know that once the interaction is maximum, output will be maximum. So in order to have more interaction, so we generally tends to slow down electromagnetic wave by using different structures. Some structures are like, I'll just show here, the structure is of helix type, like this helix type. Another structures will be some folded lines like this. These are just used to slow down the movement of electromagnetic waves such that more interaction between the line. This is basically your folded line. This is folded lines. Then we have zigzag line, another slow wave structure. Then we have waveguides, corrugated waveguides like this. We have corrugated waveguides like this, corrugated waveguides like comb type structure. All these structures are basically used to reduce the movement of slow down the electromagnetic wave. So these are different structures. So they may ask, why do we use slow wave structure? We use to slow down the movement of electromagnetic waves such that the interaction between the fields take place properly. So there are different types of slow wave structures. So this is helix type, which is shown here. This is helix type slow wave structure. This is folded back line. This is zigzag line. This is corrugated waveguide. So these are different types of slow wave structures. So we'll start now with helix traveling wave tube. What is basically helix traveling wave tube? So in general, helix traveling wave tube contains an electron gun. You can see here, it consists of an electron gun, RF interaction circuit, electron beam focusing magnet and attenuator, and finally a collector. Okay. So electron gun, basically what is the function? Electron gun is used to inject the electrons in the tube. An input RF signal is given to the helix, and the other end output is taken out. So there is a surrounding magnetic field to hold the electron beam as they tend to spread out because of the repulsive force present between the electrons and that of magnetic field produced by the permanent magnet present between the helix structure. Okay, so we have attenuator, which is used to attenuate any reflected wave generated due to impedance mismatch, and this attenuator is placed after the sufficient length of RF interaction region so that the attenuation of amplified RF signal is insignificant as compared to the amplification. And then we have a collector to collect the electron wave. So this is all about the various components which a helix traveling wave tubes consist of. So we'll see basically what how this particular traveling wave tubes work. So corresponding to this traveling wave tube, there is a very famous question which is asked in GATE examination, like which type of slow wave structure is more preferred in making traveling wave tubes. So the answer is nothing but helix type structure is basically used more frequently used structure for making traveling wave tubes. So this is one question which is being asked in your GATE examination. So now let us see what is basically your working principle of your helix TWT. So it's same as we have seen in the previous reflex klystron and a two cavity klystron. Same, more or less the application and the principle is almost same. Just we'll see. So this is the basic schematic of helix traveling wave tube. In this, from the cathode, the electrons are injected in the tube, and collector, the electrons are collected after traveling through the tube. The RF interaction region, particular RF interaction region, which you can see here, where there is a helix structure. At this point of helix, our input is provided. You can see here, RF input is provided here. And at this particular point, RF output is taken. At the center of the helix, you see here at the center of this helix, there is an attenuator present, which is placed to attenuate the reflected wave. Again, in that particular only, you see there is electron beam focusing magnet, that is nothing but permanent magnet all around this tube, which is used to provide magnetic field to hold the electron beams. So these are the various components which you can see, and corresponding to that I have shown diagram also how it's operates. So let us see how electrons move in helix traveling wave tube. So electrons are injected from the cathode point and they will travel with uniform velocity before entering the helix structure. After entering into the helix structure, their velocity is modulated. And how that velocity is modulated, let us see. So the electron which enters the helix when the field is 0, then that electrons will not be changed. Same principle we are repeating here. So the electrons which enters the helix when the field is 0, then that electron velocity will not change, and the electron which enters the helix when the field is accelerating, then the electrons will be accelerated, same thing, and the electron which enters the helix when the field is retarding, then the field electrons will, what will happen? Deaccelerated, and the velocity of that electron will be less. So then those velocity modulated electron will travel in this particular RF interaction field Because of this velocity modulation, they will form bunches of electron, and these bunches will give their kinetic energy to the field present in the RF interaction region in the next cycle. So is how electrons will move in the RF interaction region, and the output will be taken out particular from this particular point. After giving up their kinetic energy to the helix, they will be collected by the collector at this particular point. Okay, similarly, same method is being explained here. Correspondingly, effect of attenuator, all bunching process of electrons is being shown here, and this particular is continuously moving inside the interaction region, RF interaction region, which is nothing but the formation of bunches is taking place. And this is how the electrons basically moves in your traveling wave helix structure. So what is generally the specification of traveling wave tube? Again, it can be operated in the frequency range 1 to 100 gigahertz, and it can generate output powers up to 10 kilowatt average, and the gain the helix traveling wave tubes can generate is up to 10 dB gain, up to 10 to 60 dB. Here I have missed. So maximum gain up to 60 dB it can be generated, and efficiency of this is around 20 to 40%. So generally the maximum power gain given by this slow wave traveling wave tube is nothing but around 60 dB. So generally here the question asks, when you are using helix as a slow wave traveling wave tube, generally what is the power gain? So generally power gain is achieved up to 60 dB. This is an important point which has to be remembered here. So you can see here efficiency more or less is up to the level of your what, reflex klystron and two cavity klystron. Now see where we can use this particular helix traveling wave tubes. So the helix traveling wave tubes can be used in broadband microwave receivers, as a low noise RF amplifiers, and in the wideband communication link like telephony, long distance telephony, like we need repeaters to amplify the signals, and in those repeaters these helix traveling wave tubes can be used as an amplifier to amplify the signals. And the helix traveling wave tubes can be used in communication satellites, also as power output tube. So these helix traveling wave tubes can also be used for medium power or high power satellite transponder. Because of their higher power and large bandwidth, they can also be used in tropospheric scattering. Then they can be used in phased array radars in military application, electro countermeasurement systems. So all these are the practical applications of just theoretical. You have to remember these applications of traveling wave tubes. 1 or 2 is more than enough to remember. Basically, most important application of traveling wave tube is this one, low noise RF amplifier and a repeater amplifier in a wideband communication link. So these two are very important application. Generally it is being asked in ES examinations. So there will be a lot of options. So but the best option which suits the answer of application of helix traveling wave tube is nothing but broadband microwave communication receivers and repeater amplifier. So this is all about your traveling wave structures which we have studied. Then at the last we will be studying about M-type microwave tubes. So before that, let us see, we'll compare the klystron and TWT amplifier. So I have made point wise which will be easier for you to understand. So basically resonant cavities from input to output circuits are present in klystron amplifier, which is not in the case of your TWT implant. Instead of that, what is present here? Here we have slow wave structure like helix, zigzag line, corrugated waveguide. Basically klystron is a narrow band device as compared to TWT is a wideband device. It is used as a wideband amplifier like repeaters and all. It has higher efficiency as compared to that. It has lower efficiency. Frequency is up to 50 gigahertz. You can extend this as it is a wideband device as we have seen here. It can be used up to 100 gigahertz, can handle up to this much amount of power, 2.5 watts, can handle up to 200 watts of power. See, the interaction of electron beam and RF fields only at the gap, but here interaction occurs throughout the helix length, throughout the length. Here you don't have cavity, so the interaction between the electron and the RF signal occurs throughout the helix length. Each cavity operates independently. Here you have coupled cavity TW, where there is slow wave structures are present, and in this you have cavities. So no propagating, they don't have propagating wave, but here the waves will be propagating because continuous interaction between electrons and RF electromagnetic wave is taking place here. So this is all about the difference between klystron and TWT amplifier. Now we'll be discussing about M-type microwave tubes. So basically your M-type microwave tubes are also called as cross-filled tubes. So which is shown here. So microwave M-type tubes, again it is divided into three parts: resonant, non-resonant and measure effect. So we are concerned with only first type. I have given the entire classification. Sometimes they will ask in your competitive exam, give an example of M-type tube of non-resonant type. So in that you can give like Dimatron. So application wise, this is the answer. So these are the phenomena. Directly they will ask the end product, what will happen. So they will ask resonant based M-type tubes. Choose from the MCQs. They will be having 4 options. So the resonant type is nothing but magnetron. Non-resonant type is 3-part. So let us not consider forward and backward. Based on non-resonant type, we have 3 types of devices: FWCA, Dimatron and Amplitron, Carcinotron. But for measure effect, microwave amplification, stimulation emission of radiation, we have Gyrotron. So this, you please remember the end device application of your M-type field. So a M-type tube operating at resonant phenomena is nothing but magnetron. For non-resonant phenomena, we have Dimatron, Amplitron, Carcinotron. In case of measure effect M-type tubes, we have Gyrotron. So generally you remember these devices and which particular phenomena on which they operate. So we'll see M-type tubes, that is nothing but magnetron. So this is the slide. So we can see here we have different types of magnetron which is being listed here. So you have MCQ right now also, no? Shall I continue or you will give your exam? Answer me.
Exam, sir.
Exam.
Okay, I will cover this magnetron then in next class. You just then carry ahead, go ahead with your exam. You click on that link and you have to give online. Automatically it will get at 5 o'clock. So before that you please complete it.
So tomorrow we don't have a class, right?
Tomorrow you don't have a class. Tomorrow you don't have a class. Tomorrow you don't have a class because of Ganesh Chaturthi. You will be having class next week, 28th, 29th. Correct? No, Friday, Saturday, as usual. So please ask your friends not to leave this class. You have to be in this class and you have to give the exam. So now I am online only. You have to click the link. I think link is enabled. It is 4:30 now. Link is enabled. You have to give your responses. Exactly 5 o'clock it will disable. So go ahead. Best of luck. I am online only. You have to give. I am going on mute.